and welcome to my returning champions. We have Ben, CJ, Steve, and Daniel for this evening. This is a supporter chat. Hello. And if you guys would like to join us, usually every Friday nights until further notice, join our community, support the work that we do here. And who knows, you may get a personal invitation from me to join us, usually Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So welcome all. All right, so tonight's topic, something called Clear Linux. Great name, by the way. I mean, if this thing continues to progress and rock as it does, Clear Linux might be clearly the best when it comes to Linux for the masses, but that's in the future. All right, so Clear Linux. The first time I took a look at Clear Linux was way back some time ago, maybe a few years. I kind of lost track. Someone asked me to. And I don't think I even attempted to install it because it really wasn't for beginners. It didn't have a graphical installer. It was terminal-based, I believe. It's still not quite for beginners, but at least it has a GUI installer to make it somewhat easier for beginners. So a few days ago, I installed Clear Linux in a VBox, just out of curiosity. And again, there were still people telling me to take a look at this. I really wasn't expecting much. I installed it in the VBox. It installed rather quickly. I started playing with this. It has the GNOME desktop by default. It's not everybody's favorite. I understand that because it ain't zippy for one thing. So I'm playing with this in the VBox, and I have to tell you, this thing absolutely flies. For a GNOME desktop, it flies. For a Linux desktop in general, it makes the supersonic Concorde jet look like it's crawling. That's how fast this thing felt to me. And you guys, I don't have a super duper fast machine here. So I was playing with it. It's still in the alpha stages, as far as I can tell. It's powered and supported by a little company called Intel that you may have heard of. They've been around a few years. It has the full backing of Intel. It's optimized for Intel hardware as far as I could tell. And I have an Intel powered Dell here. And I was playing with this, and again, for a GNOME desktop, it flew. I was really, really impressed. Now, is this something designed for newbies? No, it's not there yet. In fact, even the website feels more corporate-ish than it is for beginners. Now, that's how it was designed, and that's fine. But websites with some tweaking and tuning up of that can be fixed. So I'm talking just about the Clear Linux OS, not the company, okay? Just Clear Linux OS. As I was zipping through this thing, playing with this, GNOME desktop for me now is somewhat familiar. Those of you more experienced know what the GNOME desktop is. It's not your favorite, or some favorites, or some people don't like it as a favorite. Totally different workflow. It's not zippy normally, but in Clear Linux, it just felt like it was more streamlined. It felt like it was tweaked, and the bloat, if there is bloat in Linux, was taken out, and it flew. I was really impressed. Now, the software, they have their own package management system. Like I said, this thing is built from scratch, and I think they have a total of 4,000 apps, pieces of software, which is a lot, but compared to 40,000 in Ubuntu, it ain't quite there yet. There are apps available that you can install that I saw, such as Kdenlive, but I didn't see a screen recorder like Simple Screen Recorder, OBS, VocoStream, Kazam. They're not in there yet. You can install Flatpaks. Now, the way to install this, you go to the software center. It kind of looks like an Ubuntu software center. Or you can go to the terminal, and I believe the command is sudo swpd, swipd, and then pick the package that you want to install. Again, it's totally built from scratch. It's totally different than what you may have seen with Arch-based or Ubuntu-based. So it's not for beginners, but it wasn't that hard to learn. The guides and documentation themselves aren't that bad. The whole website feels more corporate-ish, but in terms of the guides, if you take the time, and I had some trouble installing it in the VBox, and I was missing something. Now, I would have figured it out by myself eventually, but I went to the guides, and I had to turn something on in the VBox settings, and that solved the issue. It took me a few minutes versus maybe hours trying to figure it out on my own. So I got it installed, and it flew. I installed the VBox add-ons, the guest editions. I rebooted, and there's the desktop, and this thing flew. And I'm thinking to myself,
which version of VirtualBox are you using?
you have to install the latest version, which is 6.
6 something.
Now, if you don't read the documentation, you won't know.
6 something is pretty. It's across the board too. I've talked to other YouTubers and stuff like that about this. 6 has some issues with it running software, and it'll run it really slow. It's not as fast as a 5 version.
I didn't notice any slow, at least in Clear Linux. Now again, that system is designed for Intel. So
most with Windows 10 trying to run it in a VirtualBox, it will cut the speed right down to idle.
Oh no, I installed it in Ubuntu Mate. I didn't do it in Windows, so maybe that's why I had a better experience.
You put the Windows in the VirtualBox.
Oh, in it, got it. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It runs slower.
As the guest.
And some heavy Linux distros will do the same.
Okay. Well, the VirtualBox with Ubuntu Mate as the host, I didn't have any issues with VirtualBox 6. And like I said, Clear Linux flew. It zipped. So to make a long story short, you may recall this year we did about 5 Ubuntu shows, talking about a possible standard Ubuntu desktop for the masses. We did 5 shows. We think it's time. Windows 10 users aren't happy, blah, blah, blah. We have almost 1 billion users of Windows users. So the market's there. So we did 5 shows, and I thought, let me just do 5 shows. We can give our honest thoughts, and maybe Ubuntu may not be your favorite for a desktop for the masses, and that's fine. It could be Linux Mint, it could be ABC, it could be Uncle Guido's, it could be Gentoo. I don't care, just as long as it works. And people can walk into a store and buy it for about $400. That's what we agreed on.
Yeah.
Well, we did 5 shows, and then there were crickets. So Canonical, Mark Shuttleworth has no interest in the Ubuntu desktop for the masses, which I think he's wrong. But he's focused on the cloud services and other things. Okay, well, it's his company, and that's fine. So the Ubuntu desktop for the masses went nowhere, and that's a shame, because if it wasn't for Ubuntu, I wouldn't be here. And maybe a lot of folks. So that kind of... And I may do a few more shows that I don't know, because Ubuntu Mate rocks, as Dan knows. Okay. So... Forget about the Ubuntu show. So I was thinking to myself, as a Windows user still, maybe 20%, Windows 80%, Ubuntu Mate. Is there anything exciting in the Linux world for Windows users or Linux users, except for Chromebooks, which are exciting because they're affordable? Even the cheap ones, they work just as good as the expensive one. The Pixelbook is about $1,000. If for what I understand, the $200 version of the Chromebook is just as stable as the Pixelbook. It may not be as fancy looking or as fast, but it's just as stable, and you get the same 5-year support or more. To me, that's exciting. I don't know about you guys, but to buy a Linux machine with no bugs at all for $200 is unheard of. But Google pulled it off. Now that to me is exciting. Putting the Chromebooks aside, is there anything today in the Linux world that's exciting?
Well, you might have stumbled across it with the Clear Linux, because I got an idea where this might be going.
Yeah, we're getting to that. So I came across Clear Linux again, Dan, and because it has the backing of a company like Intel that has the resources, they got the brains, the money, they have the
chips,
they got the chips, they got it all. Okay, and we can debate, telemetry and privacy. By the way, in the install, you can enable telemetry. It's clear as day. It's not hidden fine print. You got to use your goggles to find it. It's right there now. How much does it disable? That's open for debate. Privacy and how much does it phone home? That's open for debate. Granted, we won't talk about that tonight. I'm talking about just about the experience of Clear Linux. The power of Intel. I have an Intel machine. I have a Dell. It's optimized for that. Although I have a feeling you could probably install like another pieces of hardware. It has the backing of a company. Intel's not going nowhere. At least I don't think so.
So you're probably saying that because it's optimized for Intel and it's very customizable, it's probably going to bring Linux mainstream.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
There's a company. How many gazillion Intel Power machines are out there? And if this entity that calls themselves Clear Linux OS or Clear Linux or whatever you want to call it, Clear OS, if they're truly making this to be optimized for these machines, to me in my mind is fine tuning a specific target, pre-debugged, stability, speed, special looks. You have a winner. You have something with the potential of a standard Linux desktop for the masses, because it's kind of like building a house. You want to start a stable ground. You don't want to build on quicksand, obviously. So when you build a house, you start with the foundation. Now, if you have 3 or 4 volunteers trying to build something, well, eventually it's not going to be stable. But the power of Intel, a company with the resources like a Google or an Amazon. Now, whether you like Intel or not, that's open for debate, and that's fine. I'm talking just resources, time, money, people power. Intel has it, and the machines are already out there. So if they build a Linux OS from scratch that is designed to work mainly for Intel machines, it's kind of like Chromebooks. It's running a form of Linux called Gentoo. Okay, it's designed for that. Period. If you don't like that, you don't buy the machine. You don't use it. It's web-based. That's a Chromebook. If you don't like it, don't buy it. But it's targeted for that. If Clear Linux wants to build a system from scratch targeted for specific machines only, pre-tested, pre-debugged, ready to go out of the box. And in my VBox test, very little impresses me nowadays. I think I've seen it all. But I'm testing this thing in a VBox. I'm like, what? This doesn't feel like GNOME. It's faster. It zips. It's still in alpha stages, like as far as I could tell. Give it time. But yes, I believe that Clear Linux has the potential to be a standard national Linux desktop for the masses, pre-debugged, pre-tested, ready to go out of the box. And best of all, say you don't like the GNOME desktop, you can install XFCE and run that. How's that for a newbie-friendly desktop environment? I think that's awesome. Now, will we see Clear Linux machines at $400 price point someday? I don't know. That's the sweet spot.
It's doable.
It's doable because
it would be a competitor directly for the Google book.
Exactly. I think it was Infinitely Galactic IG who did a more detailed look at Clear Linux. If you haven't already, a quick shout out to IG. IG was my very first podcast in history on the channel was with IG. Geez, 8 years ago. But he's married now with the kid, I think. So IG, how you doing, my Australian friend? He predicted somewhat that Clear Linux could be a replacement for Ubuntu as the top spot. Not now, maybe a year from now. I would have to agree. Not now. It's too early to tell. But, clearly Ubuntu doesn't care for a desktop for the masses. You can download and install it, and that's it. I'm not seeing anything from Linux Mint. You're seeing some distros fade away, like on Tergos. That's unfortunate, but that's the way the business model is. Not too many people can work for free. So,
do you mind if I ask a dumb question?
Go ahead.
What makes it not for newbies? So if it's customizable and it's fully updatable, what makes it not for newbies?
Let's start off with the website. It's too. And there's nothing wrong with it because that's the way it's too corporate-y. You need to make it more user-friendly so a Windows user won't be lost. I had to dig and find the instructions to install it in the VBox. That's number one. Right. Number two, the graphical user interface installer. I thought it was fairly easy. For a newbie like yourself, CJ, you may be lost a little bit. It's not hard, so that needs to be streamlined. Make it more user friendly. And you need to be told ahead of time somewhere, hey, if you don't like this desktop, try XFC. Maybe like a video or something. If you don't like this desktop environment, let's do XFCE. Okay, so they need to put that in there to make it easier. Installing software, you can go to the software center, but then if you don't like that, you will need to learn some terminal commands. Okay, it's not hard. It can be done. And they may not have, finally, they won't have all the software that you need. They don't have all the software that I need yet. So these are fixable things in time. Like it isn't like, oh, the system's so trashy, forget about it. No, it works fine.
And it's just simply not ready yet. I mean, they just kind of, they must have an ultimate plan because it was being designed for their servers and for developers and that. Now they're looking at a different direction, and I think you're actually right with almost every laptop and that being of Intel brand. If they have a corner market, where like most of our Linux distributions have problems, there's so many different laptops out there, and that when it's installed, not everything always works well. But with Intel, since it's Intel stuff, they'll have probably all they need, and any Intel, in theory, should install and work beautifully.
I did not do a full install. I may do a full install. I did an VBox Intel powered Dell. I really was impressed. Now again, they didn't have like a simple screen recorder or OBS yet. I checked the flat packs. I didn't see it, but I'm sure that's. Look, Steve, like it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time.
Because Intel's
got something else in mind going on because their main processor line is really not doing that good. AMD is starting to really overtake them, especially with their new Zen 2 chips that they're coming out. And Intel hasn't cracked the 10 millimeter. Well, matter of fact, they're at 10 millimeters. We're now. AMD is nanometers is what I meant to say. Is at the 7 nanometer, and that's the size that that's the size of the transistors they use in the chips. And with AMD's a whole new line of products that are coming out based on this 7 nanometer process, Intel hasn't quite even got anything close to it yet.
I've got to agree.
And they might,
actually.
Yeah.
Huh?
First of all, hi guys.
Hi Vince.
Hi.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't mean to. I just wanted to finish my train of thought, but yeah.
I was late.
You're late. Get out of here. I'm just kidding.
This whole thing with the Chromebook competition and the Clear Linux could be the thing that's sidetracking them for some kind of a new product.
I've got to say I agree with Dan because my thoughts on Clear Linux when it first came out and reading the website, I thought to myself, what's Intel's end game here? What's their whole plan? And the thoughts that came to my head were that these days, Intel are finding themselves, especially in the server space where all the money's being made in business, they're finding themselves being taken over by other processors like AMD processors. Even NVIDIA GPUs are being used as servers. And so I can see them making their own Linux that runs really, really fast, particularly on servers, cloud servers, as being them trying to actually restore their market superiority, rather than focusing on desktops and end users. Because, as we know, there's not a lot of business incentives for desktops. The margins are tight. There's not a lot of profit to be made.
True. However, there's money in the masses, so you have almost 1 billion Windows users. Do you think any company would like to take away maybe 25% of that? 10% of that? That's a lot. Now, say the profit margin on a desktop is very little, but if you sell 100 million of those, that becomes profitable.
Now, Windows 10 doesn't have to be only on a desktop. It can be on a laptop. Right. It could be on a Chromebook type competitor or a Surface. That number could cover a lot of different types of machines. I
could see a Clear Linux tablet. I could see like a Chromebook type for Clear Linux. I'm saying desktop because consumers think of a desktop, It doesn't move. Then maybe they'll buy a tablet as an auxiliary item. Or if a person does YouTube, they're not going to do YouTube on a tablet. They're not going to, usually not on a tablet or on a phone or a laptop normally. I know I don't. I do it on the machine because, because of the editing and all that, I would just want this something ready to go and to add some more RAM or an SSD, it's just easier for me. But we have almost over between 800 and 1 billion Windows users if the numbers are correct. So the potential is there. Look, all the YouTube channels, myself, Brian Lunduke, and the list goes on, who profess and promote Linux, say Windows users, you're missing out. If you were to take the total number of subscribers between myself and Brian Lunduke and all the rest, compared to almost 1 billion Windows users, if you were to take the total amount of subscribers to try and tell Windows users, hey, you're missing out on something, we suck. Because the total amount of subscribers is not even, it's like the tip of the iceberg. We're not getting through to the Windows users. So what's the missing components? And one of the missing components is mom and pop cannot walk into a store and buy a Linux machine at $400. Chromebooks are fine for what they do, but it's web-based. But I'm talking a machine, maybe mom and pop works at home. They do work and they need a desktop. They can't buy it. So they don't have that buying option. So myself and other Linux tubers, we can talk till we're blue in the face and say Linux is better for you, can be better. But if they can't physically buy it, they won't care. It's nothing against me or you or somebody else. But if they can't buy it to try it, then what's the point? That's how I see it if I were a Linux newbie.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, you guys have said it to me a million times, but it's almost the same concept as Bing being the most popular. Bing is actually more popular than Google, little do people know. But the only reason why is because Bing comes on every computer that's sold with Windows. So and that's very telling.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you're saying. Like people, if they can go in and buy and say, hey, look, I can save money on a Linux machine, they'll do it. They will do it.
Okay. Let me ask you, CJ. You are still new to this, right?
Right.
Okay. So you come here, for friendship and advice and crack a few jokes and all that. So we've been telling you, we'll try this, do that. And you're like, well, so I have to install this. I should have a separate machine. I could do this. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of time. But if you walk into your Walmart and just buy a freaking machine.
That's what I'm saying.
And then ask us for advice, for help, wouldn't that be a lot easier for you? Now take you as a consumer and multiply it by hundreds of millions of users out there.
Yeah, but not everyone's hands-on like me. I mean, I may be an idiot, a Linux idiot, but I still like to be hands-on and learn it, but most people are not like that.
That's what I'm just saying is it would be easier mentally in the frame of mind if you buy an ABC Linux machine, you take it home, it works out of the box, but you're still not quite sure. Now you come to us for a question for help. Versus you have to install it yourself, tinker with it, take the time. Now you're a busy guy, like we all are, but if you had the machine ready to go, like a Chromebook,
absolutely,
that work and then learn as you go, you just eliminated a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it is. It's you don't even need to be I mean it's Microsoft cornered the market ever since the beginning. I mean it's that simple. People are starting to understand now. And Linux. I'm here. You wouldn't have heard me say 5 years ago. I would have said Linux. Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't care. So I'm here for a reason. You know what I mean?
You want something better.
I'm fed up. I'm fed up with Windows first of all, and I want something better. Yeah.
Right. That's when I first started with Linux in 2006, I saw it in a magazine. Are you tired of Windows XP or are you bored? Try Ubuntu. I'm like, what the freak is Ubuntu? And that's how it started for me. So I was self-taught. I can't recommend that for people with 2-3 kids and working. They don't have the time for that, But I pulled it off. and I'm grateful for that for Ubuntu, for the world of Linux. But what I did is unique. I can't tell that to hundreds of millions of Windows users or families who are busy lives. But if they walk into a store, look, if you're a Windows user, Windows 7, and all you do is the web, and you don't want Windows 10, just buy a Chromebook and you're good to go. It's that simple. If all you do is emails and want to watch videos and web stuff and music, that's all you need. Trust me, a $200 Chromebook powered by Linux is all you need. It doesn't sound right because it sounds cheap. It is cheap, but you know what? It works fine. And if you have the budget, buy a Pixelbook. It's one of the best Linux machines on the planet, period, from what I've read. And it'll last you 5 years minimum, guaranteed updates. It ain't bad, so.
Hello.
Hello,
Ben.
there, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Sound check.
Hi, Ben.
I guess we lost the other Ben. Okay. Anyway.
Okay, so hypothetically, if Intel now starts to approach all the PC manufacturers like Dell, Lenovo, and starts telling them, okay, you bundle Clear Linux with all your machines, how is Microsoft going to react?
I think at first they may ignore it. Well, not ignore it, but there may not be too much of a concern if I had to guess. However, if those machines start selling, well...
Vince, listen.
Is there some kind of contractual obligation, you think, between them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
Vince, you got to know, Microsoft loves Linux.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'll
they
probably
have
try
a
to buy the
seat on
company.
Linux Foundation board. They own GitHub.
Yeah.
Keep repeating that, Ben. Just keep repeating that, and maybe one day you'll believe
Yes.
it.
Yeah, right.